Welcome, farewell fans. I'm your host, MNG, and we are here for another one-on-one. Now, I always try to bring you some of the best information that is out there, especially pertaining to fatherhood, parenting, and relationships. So today we have Andrea Waltz here, and she is going to discuss Go for No. Now, we have always been in a situation where we've been told no time and time again, whether it comes to being in your kid's life, whether it comes to just anything that you want to do, advancement in career, regardless of what it is. So we're here to give you the necessary parameters and tips of the trade to sit here and say, you know what, I may hear no, but I'm still going to go forth and go forward and achieve what I can, even though I am faced with rejection. Andrea, thank you for coming on to the show. We really are we really appreciate having you here.
Thank you. I am so glad to be with you.
Thank you. Now, your book, Go for No. Now, the message, embracing rejection to reach our goals, it could be particularly powerful for fathers, parenting, just whomever who is facing unique pressures. Now, can you tell us what sparked this idea of this approach and why you believe embracing no is such a powerful tool for growth?
Yeah. Well, and I know it sounds crazy, like who would want to spend all their time talking about the word no? Let's talk about the word yes. Everybody wants to get to yes, right?
Yes.
Right. And that's why the subtitle of the book is so important. It's yes is the destination, but no is how you get there. And
Right.
like you said in that introduction, which I thought was perfect. You're so right. We experience failure, we experience rejection,
Yeah.
we experience these things, and it doesn't matter who you are, what you do, where you come from. Although some people do get rejected more than others, no doubt about that. Um,
Definitely.
but it, and so the genesis of it, where it came from, was actually from the world of sales. My husband and business partner was selling suits for a living. He was basically failing at that job. And one day he had the chance to impress his district manager, who was coming in to watch everybody sell at the
Okay.
store, just check them out and see what was going on. And this guy walks in and basically announces that he wants to buy an entire wardrobe of clothing. And so my husband, Richard, had this moment where he's like, oh, this is great. I can impress the district manager who's there watching everybody, and maybe it'll buy me some time to like keep my job. Cause he actually thought he was going to get fired. He came from Chicago, moved to Los Angeles, and he was terrified of having to kind of go back to Chicago with his tail between his legs and admit that he couldn't like
I
be on his
understand.
own out, right? Couldn't be on his own out in Los Angeles. So anyway, he proceeds to sell this guy a suit. It was a men's clothing store, a suit and a sport coat and shirts and ties and this wholesale. Now this goes back a long time ago. So this sale came to $1,100, which like in today's money, that doesn't sound like much, but so think of it of the equivalent of today of being like $5,000, right? So this is like a very expensive sale, and he's thinking that he's going to get congratulated, and instead the district manager says, it was a great sale, but what did that customer say no to? And Richard said, well, what do you mean? What did that customer say no to? And he said, well, I watched you sell and you're not half bad, but your fear of the word no is going to kill you. He said, what did that customer say no to, Richard? And Richard thought about it, and he goes, Harold, the guy's name was Harold. Harold, that customer didn't say no to anything. Everything I laid in front of him, that customer said yes to, he bought. And then Harold asked him the really important question. He said, well, then how did you know he was done? Because the truth was the man never said no to anything. He just kept yes, yes, yes to everything. And it was at that moment that Richard had this epiphany where he realized that he was the one who shut the sale down. And he learned in that moment that he was selling from his own wallet, that there was no reason why he should have shut the sale down until he heard no from that customer, until that customer said, I am done. I'm not spending another dollar with you. That's what he should have heard. But instead, he basically took that guy up to the register, rang him up, and sent him on his way. And Harold told Richard, he said, you're good, but your fear of the word no is going to kill you. If you could just learn to get over that, you could be one of the great ones. So when he told me that story, MMG, I was like, I totally get that. Like I totally buy into, because I worked sales as well.
Right.
And that's where we met. And I started applying Go for No at my job as well. But I've now studied this. So, kind of fast forward, I've been studying the skill of getting no, getting rejected, having to ask for things in business and in life for the last 25 years.
Okay.
And it's like my mission, it's my passion. And what I recognize now is that it's not just a sales philosophy, it's a life philosophy, because we all have to ask for things all the time. We ask for discounts when we're out, at a restaurant or shopping. We ask people for favors. We have to ask for help. We have to, if we're involved in anything in society, right? We have to ask for the right form. We have to ask for an extension. Like, we're
Mm-hmm.
always negotiating with people. And so the bottom line for your listeners is that they shouldn't allow their fear or their apprehension about getting no hold them back from making the asks that they need to make in their life.
Okay. Okay. So when I think about your story and I think about what was said, and I look at it from my perspective, I'm thinking about all the situations where I didn't ask the questions that was going to get me a yes or a no. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So and I guess you can apply this in the work in a work environment. For me, and this recently happened, I was looking for a raise in my career. Now, one question had came up in one of my group chats was, when do you ask for a raise? and there's a lot of different questions, and it's all based on your comfort level and what you're familiar with at your job for you to say, I'm well versed at this point, and we can consider a little bit more career advancement, a little bit more responsibility. So the question was is, when do I go to my superior and say, hey, can we have a conversation and talk about that raise? And I believe that in that essence, we definitely fear being told no,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't want to ask the question and say, well, what can I have a raise? Am I deserving of a raise? And how do I approach this conversation? Right.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one of my fears. Like, how do I walk in, sit down at the table and say, yes, I want to request a 15% raise. I'm just playing. It's not 15%, yeah. But just walking in and say, I want to request a raise at this percentage. Can we approach, upper management and HR with this request? What does that look like, and what is the path? And I think for anybody in that situation, your first thought is that you get really nervous, and you think that if you ask for more money, then either there's going to be more responsibility, or they're going to try to find a way to put you out the door and find somebody cheaper. And I think that's kind of something that goes through everybody's mind. But if you don't go and expect a no, then you don't know, you're not going to ever understand how to grow from that no and embrace the situation for what it is, and then come back to the table later and say, okay, well, maybe I approached it the wrong way. What's the best way to approach it going forward? But if you never step into that arena and get told no, how are you supposed to approve for the next time you make the same approach?
You're so right. Well, there's so much to unpack here. Okay, so let's break some of this down. That was a lot, and I love it. I love it. Okay, so first of all, whether you're asking for a raise, whether you're asking for a promotion, you're asking for something from someone else of power, right? There's always that nervousness of what's going to happen to me if they say no, and what's the fallout going to be. And so a couple things from that, I'm going to put a pin in that, right? That's really a really important consideration. But let's start with the baseline, which is, your value, what you've contributed, and what you're going to continue to contribute. And you also have to remember the cost of losing you and finding someone else for that job. So that, that is a part of your negotiation. But I want to teach everybody a way to give context to the ask. So here's the thing though. And I think it's funny because a lot of people think that women need to be better askers, but I think men sometimes struggle with it as well because they have the same fears, right? I mean, you have the same fears, and the fear is biologically wired into us. I mean, our brains are designed to keep us alive and to keep us not dying. Like that's so when your brain's kicking in high gear and it's going like, you might not want to ask for this. You don't know what's going to happen. You could be kicked to the curb, and pretty soon your brain's coming up with all these nightmare scenarios, and it's really scary. So sometimes you just have to back up and tell your brain to slow down, thank your brain for working so hard on your behalf, but you need it to chill out. And then you have to think strategically about how do you go about making that ask. And also the other thing I want to unpack here that you mentioned too is just feeling like internally that you're worthy, like that you're deserving, that it's like, and we've all been, I think almost everybody knows they've been in a job where they're not appreciated. They're not getting they're not getting paid their value. So it's a hard thing to walk. And I said I'd put a pin in that. So we will get back to that. But just in making asks, right? And this is something that is actually not in Go for No, because Go for No is really about the mindset that, hey, you just need to go for no. You just need to hear no more often. If you've got a goal or dream, you just need to be going after it and hearing no more often. So this is we're going to go a little deeper than I usually go on any show here because you brought this up and it's so great. We've got to give context to an ask. So whenever you are going to someone and you know that maybe it's crazy, maybe it's a crazy ask, maybe it's something that you shouldn't be asking for, maybe it's outside of your comfort level, you need to call that out and you need to give context. So you sit down and you go, listen, this may surprise you what I'm about ready to ask for. This may feel like something that you weren't expecting. This may seem early since I've only worked here I'm making stuff up now, right? I've only worked here for 2 years. This may strike you as whatever. So you give context before you don't just sit down and go like, I want a raise, right? You give context and you get the person to where they're thinking, oh my gosh, what is the ask going to be? What's happening? Where is he going with this? And he's telling me like, it might be this, it might be that. And here's the thing. You also have to be willing in that moment to accept no. And you can say that. You can even say, I understand also that when I ask this of you, that the answer may be no. But what I'd like to do, if the answer is no, is I'd like us to come up with a plan of how I can get to yes. I need your help to get to that yes. So here's my ask. I would like to get on January 1st, a 20% increase in pay. So you've set it up. You've given all the context. If it's a big ask, and before you ask it, you can say, I know this is kind of a big ask. I'm just telling you right now. So again, you haven't asked it yet, but you set it up so that the person isn't blindsided and now they're on their edge of their seat, right? Now they're like, what is this going to be? Are they asking to be president of the company? Like, where is this going? This sounds crazy. He's making a big deal about this. And then when you ask it, they go, oh, okay. And you've given them the kind of psychological safety of, and I'm just telling you right now, if it's a no, then help me. Let's work together on how we can turn this into yes, because this is really important to me. Mm-hmm. And if it is a no, that I understand it. And that's where Go for No is so important, is we do it and we are willing to accept the no. And then, but at least you've got a plan, right? As opposed to going in asking and they go like, well, we'll take a look at it. It's like, no, let's not take a look at it. Let's come up with a plan of what I need to do. Because and here's the list of the stuff I've already been doing, but what do I need to do to get to that yes? So that's my recommendation for how to approach that. And it's really my recommendation of how to approach any ask if you're asking something of somebody that you work with or your partner or whatever. It's like let's say you're a dad and and you're sharing custody with your kid, right?
Right.
And you need your ex to watch your child for the weekend. And
Mhm.
you know maybe she's going to flip out or something. So don't just say like, "Hey, here's what I need." Like go in and say, "Listen, I need a big favor. And I know that I've been asking for favors a lot lately. And I know that maybe this isn't a good time for you. I understand. But here's my ask." And then you make the ask and said that context matters because people feel like as before you ask it, they're already set up. They're already set up to where you didn't just blurt it out. And so the chances of you getting a yes, because you've already identified some of their objections, you've already kind of said, "Hey, I know that this, I know it's this, I know it's that. I've been asking you for favors lately." Will probably get you a yes um, more often than just blurting it out or making a demand.
Right. You know, I like that. And staying on that particular topic when we're talking about, you know, going going forward, working with the ask, creating the narrative around the ask. I like the way you put it, especially with, parents asking parents or fathers asking their ex, can you watch the can you watch the kids, instead of saying, hey, I need you to watch the kids, coming with the actual setup in the conversation and say, hey, I know this has been this way, I know this has been that way, can we, go in this direction, or can you do this for me? And I've been in those situations, just from my background, to have those conversations. And I just kind of be direct. Like, I don't even set the ask up. I just, hey, this is what I need you to do. Yes or no. And
Yeah.
from that experience, I can honestly tell you that what Andrea is saying is actually a better approach, because when you're direct, sometimes a person can feel like they're being attacked. They could make it feel like it's personal, and it's not necessarily personal, and keeping along with that same idea of personal, what are some ways that, people can overcome the fear rejection and continue moving forward when no feels particularly personal? Because there's times where I've been told no, and sometimes it could be a business decision, but I will feel like it's a personal attack of me, especially depending on who it's coming from and what our relationship is.
Mm,
So if you're having a conversation, let's just keep it um, in a work environment, because work environment, you tend to get a lot of no's in a work environment. So if we keep it to a work environment, when you're having a conversation with a coworker or a superior or anything, and then you're making an ask or you're making a request, and maybe in some situations, and this happens often, you want to ask for a particular day off, and you're in hopes that this day is going to you're going to have this day off, and nobody else has the day off, but you still get a no. And depending on what your relationship is with that person, you may feel like it's personal to you, and
mm.
it could just be a business decision. Even though this was a particular day that you wanted to take off and it may have been important to you, it's not as important to you as it is to the other person, but they're making a business decision, not a personal decision.
Yeah. So it's tough when you get rejected on things, and it does feel personal a lot of the time. And I look at kind of the example that I use sometimes about taking things personally is, if you've ever like walked down the street and seen some artwork somewhere or whatever, and you go like, wow, that's the ugliest painting in the world, I would never hang that in my house, not in a million years, right? And the artist is standing right there, and the artist is like, wow, that's incredibly hurtful. Well, you don't mean anything about them. They're probably really great, nice people. It's just your preference for the colors and the design and whatever that piece of art looks like is just not your style, right?
Right.
A mile later, you see somebody else's art and you're like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And you would love it. And other people would say, that's terrible. I would never, never hang that. So we have to remember that all choice, that all things are preferences, and that in general, people are far more concerned with what's going on with them than they are with you, trying to punish you, trying to make your life it's miserable. You know, most of the time, people are looking out for themselves, and so
Mm.
um it is it and this is the kind of the line I like to use is it's not about you even when it's about you. So that sounds like, what are you talking about? But so you're involved, right? And
Right.
it's about you, and yet at the same time it's really about the person who's rejecting you, about their beliefs, their how they were brought up, what and what's going on in the business, and what ultimately will make their lives better and easier than that. And that's all there is to it. And so you might be collateral damage from that of, yeah, I'm not giving you Friday off because, you know, I've got all these things that I need to take care of. And so you aren't being attacked. It's no, I want my life to be easier. I want my life to be better. I want my job to go smoother. And I want you there. You just
Right.
happen to be involved in it. So I think when you do ask for those things, again, context really matters. And if you can ask, I love the word because. There's research that a guy named Robert Cialdini did. He wrote a book called Influence. It's a gazillion pages. And let me sum up for you. One of the great lessons out of that book is when you want to influence somebody, use the word because. So it's not just, hey, I'd like Friday off, is I really need Friday off because, so that people again get that context and they're more likely to go like, okay, that's a legit thing. And then your negotiation can kick in, right?
Right.
Your emotional intelligence has to kick in of, okay, how do I make this easier on this other person too? So how can I negotiate and say, and before you answer, before you say no, let me tell you what I'm willing to do, right? And so it's that kind of negotiation skill that I think will get you past that yes. But you're right, it's very easy to feel attacked, and especially if somebody's giving us those personal no's. It's often sometimes if it's somebody really close to us, sometimes it just is an attack, right? And then from there, it's not really so much about the rejection. It's about a whole other load of communication issues and things like that go far deeper than the rejection. But the true rejection is especially at the workplace, isn't just not about you. It's always about that other person.
That's true. And one thing I would want to say is, along with that, to add into that, is that, you know, from this conversation that we're having, one of the concepts we're trying to get across is that no's are not bad. And, no's, hearing no doesn't mean it's the end. You can learn from it, you can grow from it, you can get past it. So, I kind of want to, like, I know some people may feel like, I don't know, from my experience and growing up, we wasn't told no enough to understand that no is okay. And I think that as you get older and you get told no, you kind of shut down. It's like, dang, well, it's a no, so I don't want to do it anymore. Like,
Right.
it's not something that I want to chase. You have a dream, and somebody tells you like, no, you know, this can't happen. No, you can't have this training to build on this dream, and then you kind of get shut down. But no is not one. No is not a deterrent to stop. No is more of, I would say, a determination to push forward.
So Michael Jordan, everybody, there was a really famous quote about him, about like all of the shots that he missed in his career. There is like, it's some crazy number, about all the shots that he missed in his career, and the few shots where he was entrusted to do the game. This is the game winning shot, and he missed. And he's a big proponent of the kind of failure way to success philosophy. And most of us, to your point, are not taught that. Like, we're taught, oh, go out and just be successful. Go out, look successful, act successful, front that you are successful, like, don't have any weakness. And the truth is, and we have this in the book, and it's a really simple model. And the model is kind of the old model, which is yes is on one side, no is on the other. Yes is success. Yes is everything that you want in life. No's are rejection. No is failure. And we're all taught that we should move towards success and yeses and move away from failure, and that failure is embarrassing, it's shameful, it's something we want to avoid.
Right.
But the real model, like the new model that we all should be operating with, is actually we're on one side. Failure, rejection, hearing the word no is in the middle, and the yeses and the success and all of that stuff is on the other side. And when you look at great sports athletes, heroes, icons, you look at artists, musicians, the people that are out there selling the tickets to the concerts, these people heard no a lot. A lot of them have incredible stories of rejection where they heard no over and over again, where they failed, where it was embarrassing. And so we have to remember that whatever it is that we're trying to achieve, however big or small, it might be something as simple as just trying to look for a job and you're just getting turned down again and again and again. You've got to numb yourself to those no's, and you've just got to keep going and understand that it, in a lot of life, is a numbers game. A lot of it is just keep shooting, right? There's this idea of there's kind of this interesting argument I saw online, and we, from a Go for No standpoint, we've always been quantity. Go out there and fail a lot. And when you fail a lot, you fail fast. And the faster you fail, the faster you are to succeed. And then somebody else said, well, Stephen Curry doesn't shoot a lot. He shoots highly accurate shots, right? He's very accurate. And so he's just not out there shooting like tons. So agreed. If you can get them working together, meaning if you can practice the skill of asking and get good to where you get better at negotiation, you get better at asking people things, but you also do it a lot. So in other words, you're shooting a lot, you're taking a lot of shots, and they're going in the basket. Like, let's have those two. We don't have to argue with which one's better. Like, let's have both of those at the same time.
Right.
And that's really what I think is powerful about no is you've got to embrace that's just life. That's just part of the process. But we've all been sold something as kids where it wasn't. It's like, oh, just be successful. Don't fail. But the secret is failure.
And you're absolutely right. Failure equals success. And a lot of people are scared of failure. But it also takes sometimes it takes the right support system to get you through those hard times, right? One story that always comes to mind, and I share this with a lot of people, and it always lets me know that it's never too late. Okay. So if you look at the people that have changed the world with their innovation, most of them became rich within their 40s, but they had to go through a lot of failures to get to their 40s. So we're talking about Ford, we talk about, everybody in the likes of him that got rich in their 40s, they seen that first million in their 40s, right? But one story particularly stands out was Colonel Sanders. And the reason why I love this story so much is because he tried to sell this recipe to everybody and nobody wanted the recipe. He didn't find success until he was in his 60s. Now, if that isn't the most powerful story, even though it is a little short, but the essence of the story is that he never gave up. You could pitch an idea for 20 years and it doesn't catch traction until like later on. Does that mean that you failed? No, because you took those no's, you took those failures, and you kept going, you improved, you cultivated, you changed, and at the point where you thought you were going to hear a no again, you actually hear yes, and you find success. So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
so yeah, yes is over here where we have success and we have everything we want, but you got to get through a lot of no's before you can get to the yes. You're not going to get a yes on your first attempt because they may not see the vision right then and there. They may not see the opportunity right then and there. You know, I've seen something by Curtis Jackson, 50 Cent, and he said the same thing. He said he went and he pitched his show um Power to several networks, and all of them said no, and they went back and they revised some of the characters, they revised some of the storyline, and they changed it a little bit till they finally until they got a yes. So that's where the growth and the change is at, because sometimes who you're trying to pitch to, it don't fit in their scheme, but it fit into somebody else's scheme. But you got to understand that you can't just give up once that one door closes, because another door opportunity is right around the corner. You just got to keep going forward.
Totally. And a couple things to that. First, and I'm glad you brought that story up about him too, because look, he's already successful. I think a lot of people think that when you get successful, it's like, okay, he could just hang out and enjoy his money and enjoy the fame and all of that. And no, instead, he's still innovating. He's still doing different things. And the thing is, we just don't hear about it. We don't hear about the no's. We don't hear about the rejection until you come across that story and you're like, oh, wow. So he's out there pitching. He's out there being told no. And it's just on a bigger level, right? So the more successful these people get, the more they just hear no from bigger people, from people with even more power than them. And then they just go, higher and higher until, you reach like Beyonce level and nobody tells you no ever. Right? Ever.
And I'm glad you said that, because if I just read about this, and I don't know how true it is, but I just read about this another story that was inspiring to me, which was Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ movie that was not backed by studios, and he had to put his own money in to fund this film, and it was a major success, and it really wasn't promoted all that well, to the masses, but it was a big success. And yes, he was told no, but he's seen a potential and he invested in himself. And that's the other part of it, is investing in yourself and knowing that what your worth is and what you bring to the table. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, is what you bring to the table. If you know that it's a successful product, but other people are telling you no, sometimes you gotta look, you gotta pivot and look in a different direction and say, you know what? Maybe there's another direction that I have to go in to make this success, make this work. Because sometimes the bigger companies, or they don't see the bigger picture right then and there based on what the time is, because they don't see the market for it. But clearly there was a market for this movie and it was such a big success, and he invested in himself. Sometimes you got to put you have to put the faith in you to go ahead and move forward, to say, you know what, y'all told me no. If I could do it on my own, let me do it on my own. And put the grind in it and go forward, which brings me. Oh, go ahead. I see you.
No, I just love what you're saying too, and I just want to say, and a lot of people would have just taken that no and then given themselves the no and said, okay, fine, I'll stop asking. But instead, he just said, you know what? Okay, I got all the no's. I'm gonna find a different way. Rejection is often redirection, and you gotta look for that. If it matters enough for you, you'll find a way.
I just want to say that this conversation is hitting on all the questions before I even answer. So definitely when we talking about pivoting, if we look at Mel Gibson, he could have took that no personally and not pivot and not invest his money, and like you said, told himself no, and we would have never had the movie. It would have never been a success. It would have never been anything. So when we, even looking at a few other people, Tyler Perry and a few Oprah, a few others, how many times they receive no before they actually got a yes? And we don't hear about those success stories. But yes, sometimes you do have to pivot on the direction that you're going in. So if you're not getting where you feel like, if let's talk about career advancement, you feel like you're not advancing in your organization, sometimes you got to pivot and invest in yourself and look somewhere else or look for trainings to better yourself for career advancement. Sometimes,
Yeah.
and I used to get no's all the time because I wanted to move up, but I wanted to move up fast. I was ambitious, I was eager, and I just wanted to go. And you know, this is gonna tell my age. So I was working at Burger King, and I wanted to go into management. They told me no. Then I was working at Meyer. I wanted to go into management, and they told me no. So then I was working at a courthouse, and I wanted to move up, and they told me no. You didn't have the time. But I started working a second job, and it was really just like a job to supplement the money that child support was taken from me. And when I got my associate degree, I was like, hey, I want to move up. They told me yes. So look how many no's I had to go through. And we're talking about over 10 years before I got a yes. But I got the yes. And then once I got the yes, then it opened up doors for more yeses to move up the ladder. So at my primary job, I was able to move up the ladder. And then I was able to pivot from there and to go to another job, and more doors open from there. And then more doors open. So over my tenure of a career, out of the interviews that I've done and the opportunity that I had a lot of no's. We're going to say well over 100 no's, 200 no's. But the yeses prompted more opportunity once they came. So if we're talking about 200 no's and maybe 20 yeses, then 10% of the time I got a yes, and it was a better opportunity that happened than any of the other situations that I was in. So I forego a lot of. So I could have stopped at the nose and say, you know what, it's not meant for me. That's not where I want to be at. But I did pivot in some cases, went further my education so other doors can open. Reinvested in myself, and that happens. So for everybody to understand that when you receive a no, it's okay to pivot and change direction. If you want to keep moving up the ladder, you got to figure out, okay, well, what I need to do to move up the ladder. Maybe you need to build around that ask and say, okay, well, I had applied for this position, I didn't get it, I do meet some of the qualifications. What is it that we can do to help me get to that level? Because sometimes it's not about what you can find to do. Sometimes you may want some support and say, hey, what can we do so I could be able to be more prepared for this position? Because and just to be very transparent, I'm very transparent on my show. I tell my life. I was told by my previous director that she didn't believe that I was ready to take her position. And I was taken back by the statement because, I've held management positions for a long time. And for somebody to tell me that, well, I don't think you're prepared for this position, you're not, you're basically, you're not good enough. When that person had the opportunity to train you on this position and show you the inner workings, and then for them to tell you that you're not good enough for the position is it's embarrassing because they hired you. And they're supposed to be showing you and teaching you things and mentoring you and grooming you, and then they just tell you that no, you're not good enough for this position. And you live with that. How can you not take that personally in that situation? And that's what I was faced with And now when I look back at it, it's kind of laughable because it was like I was told no, but look how many times I was told no to get to where I'm at now. So you may have felt that I wasn't good enough, but the opportunity still presents itself for me to get to that position, to that higher level. That's my story for everybody that's been told that you're not good enough and you can't get to the highest level. Oh man.
I love it. I love it. Now, can I just make a couple comments on that story?
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, the thing that you displayed is something that's called growth mindset, and it's a thing that's been studied by this woman. She's I don't know, a doctor, I think, something. Her name's Carol Dweck. She wrote a book called Mindset, and she actually does a lot of work with kids, and she found that there's kind of two groups of people. There's people with a growth mindset and people with a fixed mindset. And when you have a fixed mindset attitude, what your attitude is basically is like, unless I'm innately talented, unless I can walk out on a basketball court or walk into a corporate boardroom and just totally know what I'm doing or whatever, and I just know, like, I'm a superstar naturally. It's natural, right? Unless I have that, I'm not going to try.
Right.
The people with the growth mindset say, I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to get better. Kobe Bryant was famous for this, right? He'd practice taking free throws for just hours and hours and hours at a time. So he may have had some natural innate talent, certainly, I'm sure, but also he worked so hard. And so your story is what made me think of that, because you have a choice when somebody tells you no. And when you get told no by society, or you get told no by employers over and over, that they're not going to hire you, or they're not going to promote you. And you have a choice, and you can either say, you know what, screw you, I'm out of the system. Like, I'm not going to play by your rules. And it's frustrating to have to play by some of those rules, and you have to live with some people that, quite frankly, they're just, some of them are jerks, right? They are selfish. They are rejecting you for, again, no, not from you, because they're flawed, because of whatever their issues are. And so you have a decision, though, to make. Will I let them dictate how I'm going to proceed with my life, or am I going to not be telling myself no either? I'm going to find my yes. I'm just going to go a different direction. I'm going to work harder. I'm going to work longer. We've got a saying, and I do these things called Go for No challenges, where I have small groups and we challenge people, like, see how many no's you can get, like how many no's you can get at work. If you're in sales, that's mostly what it is for people who are in sales. So they have to hear no a lot, right? In order to get to yes. And so we have these challenges, and I always tell everybody, I'm like, I said, you need to write down on a piece of paper, I can do hard things. That's what the growth mindset is. It's not about having things come easy. It's not about having the fixed mindset where you go like, okay, well, if I don't have this perfect talent, if I'm not great at this thing, then I'm not gonna, if I don't have an IQ of 150, I'm not gonna bother to try to do anything amazing. It's no, you move through those no's, write down I can do hard things, and have the growth mindset of, I'm going to do what it takes. I'm going to get to where I need to get to. And I might be told no a lot. Your story made me think about how I got turned down. And this is really kind of funny. In high school, for this social club that I wanted to be in with all the popular girls. And I lived in a really, really ritzy neighborhood. And my family was the absolute brokest family there. We were like a joke. We would get evicted and move from house to house. My stepfather was a lunatic. We don't even have time on the show to go into all of that. But anyway, so I wanted to be a part of this club, and the day came where they posted all the names on the outside of the door of who was going to be let into this club, and my name wasn't on the list. And so as a result, did I take that well or badly? Well, unfortunately, at the time I was operating with not a growth mindset. I took it really badly, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to be a part of your club. I don't care about this school. I started like skipping school. I practically didn't even I missed tons of time my sophomore year. Like I didn't even go to school. So I took that experience, and instead of saying, okay, I'm going to study, I'm going to go to other clubs, I'm going to do other things, I let that rejection turn me into a really negative person and go down a bad path where I had to like get myself out of it. It took me like 2 years. By the time I was a senior, I kind of cleaned up my act and started going back to school again. But just that small rejection, I think we can't allow those people to win. We can't allow the boss who's like, you're not ready. We can't allow those people to win. And sometimes there's not a lot we can do. And I said earlier when we started the conversation, I was like, hey, let's put a pin in this thing, right? So we're going to come back to it, which is, what do you do if you're scared? Like, what's going to happen? Maybe they're going to demote me. Maybe they're going to whatever. And at some point, if the ask is really important to you, you got to have a little courage. And yeah, sometimes it won't in the short term. It may not go the way that you want, but long term, if it's on your heart and it's something that's important to you, and you feel like, hey, I'm not just asking for this out of the blue, like I've done the work, I deserve this, then make it. And then the fallout you can deal with. You can do hard things, you can make it work. It just may not be on your timeline, and you may have to, it may take you in a whole different direction you didn't expect. But if you work hard and you believe in yourself, and some of this sounds like so cliche, but it's true.
Yeah.
You have to have a growth mindset. You have to say, you know what, I'm not going to let that person's no ruin my life.
Right. And you know what? I couldn't have said it better myself. As cliche as some of the things that we may say on this show, and people may hear in their everyday lives, which is funny because you can hear it in your everyday life, but somebody else say it and it actually clicks. So, but it all makes sense. You know, sometimes and this is for all the farewell fans that's out there. This is what I'm saying to you. I share my experiences and my life stories because I want you to learn from the things that I went through, because there's a lot of things that you can hear that may be true, that may be a lie or anything. And when I say that I've heard a lot of no's about where I can go and what I can do, that is true. When I'm telling you that as a single father, I didn't think that I was going to be able to do the things that I was able to do without a support system. That is true. When I walked into that courtroom and I actually decided to go and get custody for my son, you know, there was some no's from the referee. There was some no's from the judge. There was some negotiating that happened. There was some other conversations that happened before I can get to a yes. And I will tell anybody not to give up on anything that you want. I was talking to a good friend of mine, and she told me that she waited to her 60s to take a class on like herbalism. I think that's the word, herbalism, where, you know, they mixing herbs, you know, for the betterment of people, you know, organic stuff. And I told her, I was like, well, it's never too late to learn something new. It's never too late. So the whole idea that Go for No stands for, whether it's applied to sales, where it's applied to a business mindset, whether it's applied to your personal life or whatever, always have courage on one side walking with you, saying that you can do this, you can have this conversation, you can achieve, you can go forward. No does not mean stop. No means keep going until you get a yes. Because we've been hearing no since we was a kid. No, you can't go in that refrigerator. No, you can't have a cookie. No, you can't have milk. And at some point in time, you kept asking for it and you got a yes. Okay? whether you snuck and got the cookie or you asked and got the cookie, you got a yes at some point in time. But you've been hearing no all your life. As a kid, you never stopped when you got told no. You didn't know any better. So I would say approach the same, have the same mindset going forward. Just, cultivate it a little bit more. Like we said, surround your ask, you know, set your ask up. Don't just go in there and be direct about it. Set it up. Make it a great offer for somebody, whomever you asking. Whether you do it in your personal life, whether you do it in business or whatever. The idea here for me is that no is not a deterrent. No is not a brick wall. No is not one of those things that means it draws a line in the sand that says you cannot cross. That's not what I'm getting from this conversation. And for everybody out there that has received the no from whomever they received it from, sometimes you have to pivot. So you have options. You can go forward or you can pivot. But it doesn't mean stop. It doesn't mean give up. It doesn't mean that you're not worthy. It doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. It means that sometimes you got to change direction, or sometimes you got to improve to go forward, or sometimes you just got to invest in yourself and do it yourself. That's my take on it.
So good.
That's my take on it. But Andrea, thank you for coming on the show. I had a blast having a conversation with you. This was amazing. I didn't even get to all my questions, but we have touched on every question.
I think we did, and I have to say, yeah, this is like probably the one of the most interesting conversations I've ever had, because we went into all kinds of stuff that I normally I've got kind of a thing, and we went into all kinds of things. So thank you so much for pulling out of me some really cool stuff and also sharing some of your story. It's great to hear.
You're very welcome. For all the Farewell fans, we're going to catch y'all on the next one. Peace.